12 books, including one DNF. This is my September reading wrap-up. Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Carly. I read and review historical fiction on multiple platforms. Think your kind of book club fiction, your bestsellers, Kate Quinn's, Ariel Lohan's, those sorts of books. I love them, and if you do too, be sure and subscribe and stay tuned. As always, every book that I talk about is going to be linked below. I have a pretty good stack of physical books and a few that I only have electronic copies of that I want to talk about today. Not all of these were my faves, and I think at least one opinion on this list might surprise you. Let's start with my DNF. The Sea Witch by Eva Leigh. This is a book I was really excited about and I've been talking about everywhere. And I just figured out about a quarter of a third of the way through that this was going to be way too open door for me. I typically like closed door or fade to black books. I will occasionally, if the author has really sucked me in, read open door scenes. I might kind of skim through those a little bit. Sometimes, like another one of the books on my list here, it was pretty open door and I still enjoyed it because I was so invested in the story. That was not the case for this. Before I even got to any of the explicit scenes, I could just tell by the language and the way that the author was creating the tension between the two characters that this was going to be way more smutty than I like. And I just decided that I was not invested enough in this story or these characters to continue. That doesn't mean that this book would not be great for you. If you enjoy romantasy and open door scenes, I definitely think this is one to check out. It's set in Puritan New England. There is a woman who is accused of witchcraft. She escapes persecution and somehow finds herself the captain of a ship of other witches who now are pirates. And at some point they capture or kidnap a naval officer known for hunting witches, and sparks fly between the two of them. It was an adventure story. It was a fantasy, very much of a fantasy. That's another element that sometimes works for me and sometimes doesn't. And this one, I could feel it wasn't going to work for me. So it was a DNF, unfortunately for me, but you may want to check it out. It's getting warmer. It's a little too hot for this. So this is my handy dandy trusty Old Navy house sweater that I've had for years. And I love it. It's like that slub knit or whatever it's called. It's like the perfect weight for LA. It's a little cool here in the evenings and the mornings, but sun's out and it's starting to warm up. So at last, the latest from Marissa Silver. I really enjoyed this book very much, and I'm definitely keeping my copy that I received from the publisher. Synopsis did not do this book justice. It was not what I was expecting after reading the synopsis. However, I did really enjoy it. So the synopsis describes these two grandmothers kind of pitted against each other, fighting over superiority of the other, if you will, fighting for the love of their granddaughter. And while I did have an element of that, that was kind of like that was like a subplot. This book really is about these two women from the 50s, 60s. They've been housewives for a long time, and the world around them is changing. Women's lives are changing, and both of them find themselves widowed and kind of discovering new aspects of womanhood, or what it means to be themselves, what it means to be a woman in now the 70s. The two of them are very different. I mean, like polar opposites, as are their children, who somehow end up married. So they're connected through the marriage of their children and now by their granddaughter. It's an exploration of how very different these two women were, their different perspectives on life, what it meant to be a woman, what it meant to be a wife, what it meant to be an American. And I really enjoyed it. It was slow and very character driven and very much a slice of life novel. It took place over decades, so you even saw them in their advanced age, and I loved that about this book. I loved that from the get-go we have older female main characters who we age with over time over the course of the book. I highly recommend this if you like quiet novels. neighbor on a motorcycle. I highly recommend this if you like quiet novels that aren't very plot driven. If you want something a little bit more propulsive and plot driven, but also has a great character element, I would recommend The Last Assignment by Erica Roebuck. I read and enjoyed her last novel, The Last 12 Miles, excuse me, and went into this expecting to really enjoy it, and I did. It is a little chunky. I see why the author did what she did with the length of the book. This is based on the true story of Dickie Chappelle, who was a wartime correspondent, specifically a photographer, during World War II, into the Korean War, and then later during the Cuban Revolution and into the Vietnam era. This focused very much on Dickie as a kind of revolutionary female war correspondent, and she absolutely was. I loved that it incorporated so much of Dickie's perspective. I mean, we're really in the mind and the heart of this character, and I loved that. And it felt very much like my favorite Graham Greene novel, The Quiet American. You know, we're real boots on the ground in each of the settings that we find this character in. We meet Dickie later on in her life. She has already had her World War II wartime experience, and we're kind of meeting her after that period and following her over the course of many years in her post-World War II, say that 2 times fast, life. I was very compelled by this book, very compelled by this character. Roebuck did a great job bringing her to life. I am thinking of giving away my copy, but I may keep it. I don't know. I'm torn. I don't think it's one that I would read again, but I do think I might reference it again. So I don't know. I might keep it. The Invincible Miss Cust by Penny Haw was the September Women in STEM BBFL book club pick. I am so happy that the book club picked this book. It was very good. I very much enjoyed this. Was it a 5-star change your life novel? No. But I, again, found this character very compelling. Another based on a real woman in history. This is the story of Eileen Cust, who was the very first female veterinarian in the UK. And this is her story from girlhood into later life of how she had to fight tooth and nail to achieve her dream of being a practicing veterinarian. I found that some of the other women in STEM books featured a main character that was working in a STEM field, but maybe it was much more focused on the romance or, you know, some other element of her life and not actually her practice in her STEM field. And I loved that this book had that. I mean, you read descriptions of what exactly Eileen was doing with that particular animal, kind of what they were experiencing, what her diagnosis was, what apparatus she was using. It's very detailed with regard to the science behind veterinary science. I did not agree with one element of this book, or it didn't vibe with me. Shouldn't say I don't agree. I don't know, that's not the right way to phrase it, but the way the author handled the romance in this book, I was just a little brokenhearted about it. But I understand why she did what she did. I don't want to give anything away, but the main romance is one between a Catholic and a Protestant. And I understand why the author chose to make the choices that she did. But I was like, no! Again, very emotional at times. I felt brokenhearted for this character several times in this novel, and I really enjoyed my experience with it, and think that if you want a women in STEM book that is set in a historical timeline that features a very real woman in history, this would be a great one. One of 3 TBR jar pulls. Yes, I read 3 of my 4 TBR jar pulls in the month of September. This by far was my favorite, Conjure Women by Afia Atakora. I cannot say enough about this book. I really enjoyed it. I relate it to my experience with Junie, which I read earlier this year, and Let Us Descend, which I read last year and loved. This is a good mashup of those 2 books. And I was just loved it. I really enjoyed this book. I think I gave it 5 stars at the time that I finished it. I may now feel like it's more of like a 4.5, just because there are elements that, not that I didn't enjoy, but that I already have kind of forgotten. And usually my 5-star reads really stick with me for a long time. So take that into consideration, but I still highly recommend this book. So this is about 2 women, a mother and daughter, who are kind of straddling slavery. And what I mean by that is, when we first meet the mother, she is enslaved. Her daughter is also enslaved. Later in the daughter's POV, she is now free. So slavery has ended. Slaves have been emancipated. We're in the Reconstruction era. And she is still living on the plantation in the community of former slaves now. Both of them are conjure women. And what I mean by that is they were the local healers on the plantation. They did dabble a bit in what one might call magic, and they were also midwives. So they were looked to on the plantation to really kind of hold the community together. They were the ones that everyone went to when they were experiencing some type of hardship, and looked to for inspiration and guidance. And something happens in the daughter's timeline that really shakes things up. A young child is born in a caul to cut the caul and save the baby. And the baby, when she first lays eyes on him, she's shocked because of his appearance. He has these black eyes and this strange, almost scale-like skin. And from the moment the baby is born, everyone in the community is kind of on edge. And things start to happen, terrible things start to happen that the community now believes are related to this infant. Well, she feels compelled to protect this infant. So now she is seen as in cahoots, if you will, with all the evil things that are happening on the plantation. So the plantation turned to almost like a traveling preacher to come in and kind of save the community, bless the community, bring them religion. So now we're at odds between the conjure woman and the preacher man. And it's so good. I loved this book. One of the things that I enjoyed the most about this is that it had so many elements of Black history and culture that really helped to shape storytelling in Black culture. And one in particular were stories of Brer Rabbit and Brer Fox, which were born in that kind of slavery period in the South. Those are Black stories, and they're featured in here in a lovely way. And I really enjoyed this book so much. If you're looking for a Black authored book to read during the scary season, this is definitely a good one. Now for my surprising take on a book. I think you guys might be a little disappointed, and I hope not. So when I read a book that I feel like is shoving Christianity down my throat, I am very triggered and turned off. And I felt like this Tinderland did exactly that. This was my first William Kent Kruger, and will probably, unfortunately, be my last, because some of the things that I've heard from other folks since sharing my opinion on this in a little tight-knit circle is that some of his other books are similar. I don't know. I would love to hear from you guys, but I found this book to at times be very preachy and overtly Christian. And again, that's just not my jam. I will tolerate that a little bit more in like holiday book, but overall, when I get a preachy vibe from a book, I'm really disappointed. And I'm very disappointed that I did not enjoy this book, because I actually think this was a well-written book. He's a great storyteller. So this is the story of 4 young kids who run away from an orphanage in Depression era Minnesota. Yeah. And they take a small boat, canoe, whatever you want to call it, down the Gilead River. And along the way, have adventures, some of which are very scary and put them in really dangerous situations. Others are very, almost lighthearted in a sense. At some point, they come across a traveling church, and I totally pictured the female preacher of the traveling ministry as the female preacher in HBO's remake of Perry Mason. Like, that was in my mind. But yeah, I enjoyed the story and the storytelling. It was a great adventure, and it was a great glimpse into what life was like for orphans and really, really impoverished people during the Great Depression. We even have like a little bit of a glimpse into almost like a Hooverville. However, there were moments in this book that, again, just felt so overtly Christian. It just was a turnoff for me. I get what the author was trying to do with that particular storyline, but it just didn't vibe for me. One of the things that I did appreciate the most about this book was the sibling story. And I love a good sibling story. So this would qualify as a sibling story that I recommend in the future, but with the trigger warning, if you will, that if you have any aversion to overtly Christian novels, you may want to step into this lightly. On the other end of the spectrum, we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is one of my fall TBR books that I was so excited to jump into. As I said before in a previous video, I got my Libby hold came through, and I decided to go ahead and bump this up. I was going to read this. I'd been saving it for October, but I decided, let me go ahead and read this in September. I did a tandem read with my eyes and my ears. Highly recommend both mediums. This is a really dark feminist tale of 3 sapphic vampires, 3 different timelines that all kind of come together in the end. It is slow at times, but a lot of that is not necessarily world building, but character building and story building. I really enjoyed the most historical timeline. I thought that was the best timeline. The story of Maria is a 16th century aristocratic young woman who marries another aristocrat and finds that married life doesn't necessarily suit her. She finds herself really drawn to this female apothecary in the community, and next thing you know, she is a vampire wandering Europe for decades. I loved her story, and I found that she was the most compelling of the 3 female main characters. I did enjoy how dark this was. This was very violent and had a lot of violence on the page. So if that's not for you, gore and violence, then you may not want to read this one, or you may want to just be aware of that going in. I love Schwab's ability to suck you into a story that just really feel very much like you're part of the story. I felt that way in Addie LaRue, like I was walking the streets of whatever city Addie was in at that time. This felt very similar. I mean, I'm traipsing around the dark city streets of Europe with Maria, and it had a vibe. This book is a vibe, and I loved it. For those of you who've been around a while, you may remember that a couple of months ago, I polled my BookTube subscribers and my Instagram followers to choose one of 3 Kate Morton books to be my first ever Kate Morton. And this is what you all chose, The Secret Keeper. Yeah, I thought so. Almost said The Secret Garden. I know that wasn't right. And thank you. I love this book. It was so good. Kate Morton's writing is stunning. So many people have been telling me for a long time that I would love her writing, and they were right. This is a dual timeline World War II mystery. It is very much a sibling story and a mother-daughter story, and I loved that. I love that our female main character in the more contemporary setting was older. So she's an older woman whose aging mother is now dying, and she is desperate to find out more information about who was her mother. She witnessed at the age of 16 her mother violently attacking a man who showed up on their doorstep. She has no context for that, and now that her mother is dying, she wants to better understand who that man was and why he was such a threat to her mother. The historical timeline in the World War II era was, I think, my least favorite of the two timelines, only because the main character just felt very irritating. She kind of lives in this dream world. She wants to be someone who she is not. She wants to kind of live outside of her station, if you will. So she leaves her family and goes to work for this aristocratic woman who needs a female companion. While in service to this woman, she meets a neighbor who is a very glamorous aristocratic woman who she befriends. I really enjoyed the mystery of this book. I guessed the twist pretty early on, but I didn't even mind that. What I loved the most about this book was the relationship between the siblings and the relationship between our two FMCs, the mother-daughter duo. I felt much like I was sitting at Mother's bedside, holding her hand as she lay dying. I highly recommend this. It is chunky. This is the first book in a while that motivated me to get up and read early at the start of my day. I haven't done that in a long time, and I found myself drawn to this book. I needed some more time with my physical copy because I only had a physical copy, and that was the time that I had available to me, and I'm not a morning person. Now for the books that I only have electronic copies of. Let's start with my favorite book of the month, Play Nice by Rachel Harrison. Rachel Harrison can do no wrong in my book. This is my third Harrison. I adored this book. This is snarky, witty, dark, scary, and oh so feminist. This is a story of a young woman who is a fashion influencer, designer, and she lives this really posh life in Brooklyn. We learn about her and her siblings that at some point they were taken out of the custody of their mother, who was believed to be crazy, and were raised in the care of their father and with no relationship to their mother after that break. And there were some incidents that led up to that break, and we learn about those in the book over time. These incidents were very traumatic and involved the home in which they lived with their mother post-divorce, which their mother believed to be possessed by a demon. Now mother has died suddenly, and the girls find out that their mother never sold that home. It now belongs to them. Well, the three of them are at odds about what to do with the home. The two older sisters, I don't want to go back there ever. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Let's just get rid of it. The youngest daughter, our main character, decides, you know what? I'm going to use this as an opportunity to reconnect with mom and renovate the house, create content while renovating the house, and then we can sell it and make a profit. She moves into the home, soon discovers that mom wasn't lying. So it's very much the journey of her discovering what happened when she was a young child. You know, she's got kind of faded memories of that time. Her reconnecting with her mother through her mother's book, which she wrote about the possession and apparently left her an annotated copy of in the home. Discovering the truth about her mother's experience and her experiences as a child, learning about the gaslighting that was happening to her mother at the time. So it's very much a reflection of women's experiences with gaslighting and the expectation of women to be silent to be conforming, to be female or feminine. Yeah, it's great. It's great. The author has shared that this book was very much inspired by some of the experiences of the early 2000s young starlets. Think Lindsay Lohan, Amanda Bynes, Britney Spears, and just some of the gaslighting that those young women experienced in their effort to kind of become independent. And yeah, I can totally see that. I very, very, very much enjoyed this story. It is scary. It at times is gory. I definitely had some hair-raising experiences with this book, so know that going in. It is very much a horror story. It also uses some horror tropes to kind of explore some of the themes around femininity. And again, I love a good sibling story, and this was a great one. When No One Is Watching was another one of my TBR jar pulls. This is by Alyssa Cole. The funny thing is, my In Real Life book club read this last year. It was my book that I chose, or one of the books that I chose that they voted on. And I didn't get to go to the book club because of baseball and didn't read it at the time. And I regret that. I enjoyed this book so much. This was a great mashup of Lovecraft Country versus the show. I have not read the book. And Get Out by Jordan Peele. This is about a young Black woman who is desperate to hang on to her mother's home in a historically Black neighborhood in Brooklyn. And she and several other Black neighbors who have lived there for decades have created this neighborhood watch program, or kind of a neighborhood support program. It really focuses on the encroaching gentrification that's happening in their community, and just kind of the neighbors are all like, what's going on? So there's these funny kind of text exchanges or like Facebook type post exchanges. There's a couple of different subplots happening. So there's a romance subplot with this white young man who moves in with his girlfriend at the time, purchases one of the homes. So they're part of the gentrification that's happening. And he kind of discovers that his girlfriend is not who he thought she was. And their relationship is really crumbling, and he decides he's going to help our female main character get to the bottom of some of what's going on in the community. There's also a subplot involving her mother that I don't want to give anything away about, so I won't talk a lot about that. But yeah, it's really rich with social commentary and observations about injustice and inequality, racism. I enjoy this very much. I listened to it and I devoured it in a day. I had to know what was going on in this book. The ending was right out of a movie, and I freaking loved it so much. So if you love movies like Get Out or shows like Lovecraft Country, I think this would resonate with you. All That Life by my friend Leah Toole was one of the standouts of the month, I won't lie. Leah is an indie author who has primarily written Tudor history fiction. I featured one of her books, The Rose and the Pomegranate, in a previous video, and I really enjoyed that. So I was surprised when Leah said, hey, I have this World War II book that I'd love for you to read. I'm like, you wrote a World War II book? I was really surprised by how great this was. I was so compelled by all of the characters in this book, and the way that she wove this story together, the structure that she created was really interesting and felt fresh, even though a lot of the stories in this book I've read about in other books. I think there are 5 different storylines. In one, we have a young Jewish woman who lives with her parents in this kind of secluded, wooded town in France that isn't yet occupied. Another, we have a young Jewish man who he and his family are having to escape Germany, which is now Nazi Germany, into Poland. In another, we have a young Dutch girl who she and her sister join the Dutch resistance. In another, we have a young German man who is a Nazi soldier who's kind of waking up and realizing, hey, I don't think this is right. And we also have this fifth kind of presence, this sinister presence, who is murdering young Jewish children. Though all of the storylines didn't weave together neatly, they still all kind of give that juxtaposition of what was happening in different communities in Europe at the time. So you get these really compelling stories of these various characters, and I found myself flipping through this one so fast. I was invested in two of the storylines that I could not put this down. I rated this 4 stars, now on Kindle Unlimited if you want to read that. Was it my favorite World War II book ever? No, but I thought it was a good solid read, and I thought it was an interesting take on some of the stories that we've read about and loved before. Here to Stay was my In Real Life Book Club's September pick that I listened to on audio. It was a thriller, and I didn't find it particularly thrilling. I found it a little predictable. So it's about a man who finds himself in a relationship with this woman kind of all of a sudden, and they quickly marry. She moves in, and all of a sudden her family, from who she's been estranged for many years, need a place to stay. As you can imagine, things start to happen, and he kind of finds himself in a situation where he wants these people out, and they are digging in. They're not leaving. When people around him that he knows and loves start to die, he starts to question, are they responsible? I did find it entertaining. I did finish it. If I found it predictable, then I'm guessing that you, if you are a thriller lover, might also. So there you have it. That is my September reading wrap up. Everything that I read and or did not finish in September. I was also reading 4 other books that I did not finish before the end of the month. So you'll have to stay tuned for reviews of The Guest in Room 120, Rebecca, if I finish it, The Future Saints, and The Lost Story of Eva Fuentes. I am really curious to hear, what was your favorite book of the month of September? Have you read any of these books? Do you agree with me about any of them? Do you disagree with me about any of them? I'm really, really interested to hear what you guys think about my take on William Kent Kruger. And yeah, that's what I got for you guys for September. Thanks so much for watching, and happy reading.